movie begins with a news broadcast where a doctor announces that scientists have found a cure for cancer and it works in 100% of cases. However, this was before the main events took place. The cure turned out to be a virus that went out of control. 3 years later, New York City is completely deserted. The streets are filled with abandoned cars, underground tunnels are flooded, and fresh grass is breaking through the asphalt. A bright red car speeds through the empty streets, driven by the protagonist, Robert. In the passenger seat is his dog, Sam. The car scares away a flock of crows, unaccustomed to such audacity. Herds of deer, which have multiplied, run away. Robert, narrowly avoiding an accident, follows them. He is hunting, but shooting accurately at a moving target while on the move is no easy task. He misses the herd, much to the dismay of his barking dog. Robert then continues on foot. Times Square is almost waist-high in grass, with no wandering tourists, locals, or endless streams of cars. He tracks a deer, but doesn't manage to shoot it. A lioness appears, followed by a lion and their cubs. Deciding it's not worth tangling with an entire pride, as he doesn't have enough bullets, Robert wisely retreats, especially since his timer goes off, reminding him that the sun is about to set. Switching to another car, he returns home, where he prepares dinner. On the refrigerator, there is a cover of Time magazine featuring his photo with the caption, "Savior." After dinner, he bathes the dog, never stopping his conversation with her. There are no other companions around. Casting a wistful glance at the setting sun, Robert closes all the windows with metal shutters and bolts the doors. At night, he sleeps huddled in the bathtub with his rifle and dog. Outside, strange sounds can be heard, a mix of animal growls and howls. In his sleep, Robert dreams of the past. He is taking his wife, daughter, and dog from their home. They are anxious, and the military escort addresses him as Colonel. There is an emergency evacuation underway. In half an hour, Manhattan will be completely closed. The escorts take them to an evacuation point. From their conversation, it is clear that a certain virus is airborne. The radio broadcasts an address from the president. The head of the nation has signed an order to impose a military quarantine in New York City. Robert mentions that creating a vaccine within a week or two will help prevent the pandemic, and this is what he will be working on while staying in the city. A pale man crashes into their car while it's moving. The dream ends there. Robert wakes up in bed, despite having fallen asleep in the bathtub, and starts his morning workout. Afterward, he goes down to the basement where the dog isn't allowed. There is a sterile laboratory there. Robert works on developing a vaccine for the disease, but all the surviving test rats exhibit aggressive behavior. However, one of the samples has managed to curb the symptoms. Robert records in his journal that human trials will be necessary. Grabbing his rifle, he heads outside. First, he goes to the video rental store, where mannequins are set up. Robert talks to them as if they are old acquaintances. This is how he keeps his sanity, simulating normal social interactions. The next stop is a cornfield, where he gathers fresh ears of corn. Then comes the monotonous task of searching residential houses according to a map. Given the apocalyptic conditions, Robert isn't looting, but gathering supplies for the only survivor, himself. He stumbles upon a decorated nursery. It seems that a couple who lived here once prepared for the birth of a child. This reminds Robert of his own family. After filling up at a gas station using a manual pump, he goes on the radio. His message makes it clear that he is the only survivor in the city. Every noon, he visits the pier at the South Street Seaport. If anyone else has survived and can hear him, he sets a meeting there, playing golf on the wing of an airplane on an aircraft carrier while he waits. The dog senses a deer nearby. Robert begins tracking it. Sam chases the animal through a doorway, ignoring Robert's shouts. He follows, turning on his rifle's flashlight, fully on guard. He mutters to himself that they need to leave, cautiously covering the flashlight with his hand to avoid attracting attention too soon. Bloodstains are visible on the floor and steps. A red trail leads upstairs. Robert finds the dead deer, but there is no sign of the dog. Trembling with fear, he moves further. Suddenly, the beam of light reveals a dozen bodies in the dark. A whole crowd of infected people, ignoring Robert. He quickly covers the flashlight and leaves. The dog is cowering in fear under a table. She was frightened by one of the infected, who leaps at Robert, only to receive several bullets in the chest. Robert runs out of the building, pursued by the infected. Jumping out of a window into the open sky with the pursuers right behind, Robert manages to escape. The infected lead a nocturnal lifestyle due to their painful sensitivity to sunlight. They die when exposed to ultraviolet light. Leaving the dog in the car, Robert sets up a trap. He draws his own blood to use as bait. Then he returns home. He pours the blood into the center of a snare and waits. Soon the trap triggers, pulling an infected into the shadow under a bridge. Robert knocks the captive unconscious with the butt of his rifle. Suddenly, another one appears in the doorway. He roars furiously at the hunter, enduring burns from the sunlight. This surprises the scientist. Such strange behavior is not typical for the infected. The captured subject turns out to be an infected woman. Robert records the beginning of the experiment on camera and injects her with the vaccine that made the lab rat less aggressive. The first reaction to the drug results in a drop in temperature and a decrease in heart rate. But after just a couple of minutes, the subject has a fit of rage, after which she immediately falls asleep. This greatly disappoints Neville. After finishing the experiments, the man goes upstairs to record his video diary. It becomes clear that he is immune to the virus, which is transmitted both through the air and by direct contact with the infected. However, dogs are only susceptible to the airborne strain, so if Sam gets bitten, it will be the end for her. Another flashback takes him back to the night of the evacuation. The street is blocked. Robert is walking with his family through a crowd of panicking people. As people are boarding the ferry, those in respirator masks are checked for eye clarity with a special device. Robert's wife turns out to be infected, and she is not allowed through with their daughter and husband. A scandal breaks out, but thanks to the scientist's high status, the woman is scanned again, and the result comes out clean. She is allowed to pass. Robert accompanies his family to the helicopter, where one of the soldiers promises to look after them. He says goodbye to his loved ones. His daughter gives Sam the puppy to protect her dad. The helicopter begins to take off, and at this moment, the hero wakes up again. During his daily patrol around the city, Robert notices that one of the mannequins from the video store is standing outside. This is strange, as mannequins can only move on their own in the Doctor Who universe, and there are no other intelligent survivors left in New York. He suddenly has a paranoid episode. What if some enemies are watching him right now from the windows? The man nervously shoots in all directions. When the ammo runs out, he approaches the mannequin, but steps into a snare trap, the very same type he had set earlier for the infected test subject. Robert finds himself hanging upside down, unconscious from the impact. He wakes up to the barking of loyal Sam. All this time, she's been running around below, though it was already starting to get dark. Using a knife, he manages to free himself, but during the fall, a metal rod pierces his leg. He has to crawl to the car in the last rays of the setting sun. In the twilight, the vampires come out to hunt. Robert first hears them and then sees them in the broken windows of the building. Only a thin strip of light separates him from death. He almost makes it to the car when the sun sets, and the infected dogs pounce on him. Robert managed to shoot one, Sam fought off the second, and the third almost bit the man. Only the help of the loyal shepherd saved him from death, but Sam was injured. The scientist takes the wounded dog home, hoping for a miracle. He injects his four-legged friend with the vaccine that helped the rat, then hugs the shepherd while sitting on the floor, waiting for the result. But Sam's fur begins to fall out. Her eyes redden, and her gums show the characteristic blackening. Moments later, she lunges at her owner. Robert has to strangle his only remaining friend. In the morning, he buries the dog, unable to believe she's no longer by his side. Then he plans his revenge on the infected. At dusk, he drives around the city to lure them to the pier, where he runs them over with a car equipped with ultraviolet lamps. The plan is reliable, of course, but the obvious numerical superiority nullifies Robert's entire tactical plan. The infected overturn the car, and their leader approaches the scientist trapped inside. He almost reaches Neville, but is scared off by a powerful ultraviolet lamp lit by someone else. The stunned scientist is dragged into a car by other survivors. The woman at the wheel tries to find out where he lives. Losing consciousness, the hero gives the address, but asks them not to show up until dawn so the infected won't track them. In his delirium, the last flashback occurs. The helicopter with his family is hit by another one, which lost control due to a monster attack. Robert wakes up to the sound of a cartoon playing on TV. His leg is neatly stitched up, and he is lying on the couch in his apartment. There is a clatter of dishes in the kitchen. Someone's there. The man takes a gun out of the cupboard and goes to deal with the unexpected guests. It turns out to be Anna and her son Ethan. Robert puts the gun aside and joins them for breakfast, which the guest has made from his supplies. The host is still in a kind of stupor. He cannot come to terms with the dog's death and the fact that he has finally met other people. Anna explains that she caught his radio message and waited all day at the pier, where Robert didn't show up for the first time in a long time because he was burying his friend. They are heading to a survivor colony, but the scientist says there is no safe zone. The woman insists that in the mountains, where the climate is colder, the virus could not survive, and there are other people there. Robert snaps, breaks a plate, and yells that there are no other survivors. This frightens the guest. To ease the tension, he goes upstairs to be alone. After calming down, he returns to the living room, where Ethan is watching a cartoon. Robert quotes the dialogue from memory, which melts the ice of mistrust between them. Anna tells how she survived. She and Ethan were immune. She offers the scientist to move with them to the camp, but he refuses. His mission is to find a cure here. Lowering the body temperature may help the serum work. A little later, Anna tries again to convince him to go with them, but Neville repeats that there is no colony. During the evacuation, everything went wrong, and the military had no plan. But the woman blindly believes in the safe zone. Their argument about divine providence is interrupted by a noise outside. The infected tracked Anna's car from the night before and are now storming Robert's refuge. The first wave is repelled by detonating pre-installed explosives. But the night is long, and there are too many enemies. Stunned by the blast wave, Robert goes to the second floor. Anna and Ethan aren't there, and the window is broken. Vampires attack him. During the fight, he has to blow up his own supplies, but it only scares the creatures away. Robert finds the guests hiding under a cabinet. He manages to shoot an infected one that came after them. Meanwhile, outside, a second wave of attackers is gathering. The people hide from them in the basement lab. The monsters climb onto the roof and break through, filling the house. In the basement, the scientist notices that the vaccine has worked on the cooled body. The captive has returned to her human form. But the other infected have already broken into the lab. Only a thick glass door separates them from the people. It is only a matter of time before they break it. Robert gives Anna the cured woman's blood and hides her and the boy in a compartment to wait until dawn. He stays outside. He looks at a photo of his family, then takes out a hidden grenade and pulls the pin. When the leader of the infected breaks the glass, the scientist lunges at him, releasing the safety pin. In the final scene, Anna and Ethan walk along the highway through the autumn forest. They stop and get out of the car. The camera shifts, revealing large metal gates. They open. Behind them is the survivor camp. Robert was wrong after all. That's it. Subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts on the movie in the comments. All the best.